An opening day land over at Disney's Animal Kingdom is finally shutting down, and its lead designer is touring. Let's talk about Joe Rohde and the last moments of Dinoland USA here on That Park Place. Hello, I am Jonas J. Campbell, an investigative reporter for That Park Place, and here with me is amateur archaeologist Mr. VashSky. Vash, it looks like Joe Rohde is over at Animal Kingdom doing some documentarian activities. Have you heard about that?
I have heard a little bit about that. Apparently, Joe Rohde, obviously his influence cannot be understated when it comes to the legacy of the theme parks themselves. But we have heard that he's been doing a little bit of consulting work for Disney in some regard, or at least in the form of teaching new Imagineers about the foundational principles of Imagineering, which is good. So I think a lot of people, when looking at the Tropical Americas redo affecting Animal Kingdom, a park that he so lovingly worked on for all those years, I think a lot of people have been looking to him primarily as to what his opinion is about all the recent changes to this specific park, that being Disney's Animal Kingdom out in Walt Disney World.
Yeah, and I think there's an interesting thing about Joe Rohde in that the first time someone sees Joe Rohde, and I think he's familiar with this, hey, it's interesting. That's the guy with the earring. Why has he got the earring? And then he starts to pop up more. And there are levels here where people understand that he's there, and then they start to understand that no, it's not just he has this unusual style here. He's actually someone who has shaped much of modern Disney. He's a fascinating guy. He actually has some great talks that he gives on how to merge creativity and business together. He's a legendary Imagineer we throw that phrase around like so much confetti sometimes. He really is an amazing part of modern Disney. Vash, why don't you take over for me?
Absolutely, 100%. So we have Walt Disney World News today with a story from Joe Rohde coming out here. Disney legend and Imagineer Joe Rohde documents Dinoland USA ahead of permanent closure. This by Phil Wood of Walt Disney World News today, October 18, 2024. Disney legend and Imagineer Joe Rohde took to Instagram to share a piece of his artwork and give his thoughts regarding the upcoming permanent closure of Dinoland USA. You can see the artwork listed right here as Dinoland USA gets ready to permanently close to make way for Pueblo Esperanza at Disney's Animal Kingdom. Disney legend and Imagineer Joe Rohde took to Instagram to share the above photograph and give his thoughts on the land's imminent closure. Here's what he had to say. I was just recently wandering around the inside of Restaurantosaurus in Dinoland USA at Disney's Animal Kingdom. First of all, as much as I love dinosaurs, let me say that I am excited about the changes to come. But I did want to get some archival photographs of the design because it will be useful in teaching about design. That's a point here that needs to be focused on. He is teaching currently, which is great. I think that is we've been, I think, very critical here at That Park Place in how there's no longer this institutional knowledge that is kept within the company. People just kind of come in, they leave so frequently and so quickly that nothing is learned and stored, let's say.
Right.
So
we need to point out that this was a situation that existed before 2019, but when the 2020 stuff happened, anyone who was thinking about leaving the company because of the way things were handled in that year on both sides of the aisle, anyone who had any friction in some things that were thought to be settled by all parties. There was one side that said, we all agree on this, and another side that said, hold on, wait a minute. Maybe that's not how we view these things that are happening within the company. I'm being very vague because I don't want to be cruel and rehash the past here. But I think there were some older, more seasoned Imagineers that maybe had a problem with a couple of things, on top of the fact that Bob Chapek made the very public decision to move Imagineering from California to Florida. While those are very similar in climate, that's a phrase I'm going to say trepidatiously, they're very different in culture in many ways. And also, a lot of people who are in that California culture were not necessarily excited about moving to Florida. So you have a medical situation, you have a cultural situation, and you have a cross-country move that was about to happen. And so Imagineering, anybody who was near leaving that wanted to be a consultant and not be at the whims of the company, they all decided, I don't want to deal with this. I'm going to go work for Gensler and then get paid more money to come back in and only consult and only work on the things that they want to work on. So go ahead, Vash.
Very, very true, and that shouldn't be understated, which is why we pause right there. This piece by me, which is a pretty big painting, was supposed to be done in a style suggesting that it was pretty old, like from before World War II. It is meant to be evocative of the dinosaur paintings of the paleo illustrator Charles Knight. I am, however, compulsively more colorful as a painter. It's probably one of the last things I ever got to paint as a real painter before the directorial responsibilities of leading teams made it impossible for me to devote this much time to a single work of art. For that reason, it is close to my heart. It's not particularly scientifically accurate, but that was meant to be part of its nostalgic flavor. I do know that the Styracosaurus and Tyrannosaurus Rex did not live at the same time. Maybe it's a Gorgosaurus. That's kind of funny right there.
I'm going to say Styracosaurus, but I don't know. Or Gorgosaurus?
Is he making a joke that it's gorgeous?
I don't know, but that's hilarious. That's a good looking dinosaur right there.
Yes, indeed. Definitely some nostalgia, I would assume, because Animal Kingdom was such a project that was large in scope for Joe Rohde, obviously, but also close to his heart. He was seen as the guy that shepherded the park even after its opening. He was involved, I think, with every major project added to the park, specifically like Expedition Everest, for example, and also to Avatar, The Land of Pandora. So I think people look to him as like, hey, what is the future for this park? What is the future vision for this park? And so when you see something like, let's say, Zootopia, that has been kind of probably a more contentious issue than it should be, especially when associated with Animal Kingdom, because I think for anybody not invested into Disney to the degree that maybe you or I are, or people watching this video, it might seem obvious that Zootopia might be a natural fit for Animal Kingdom. However, Joe Rohde, as people are some well aware, that he's had some differences regarding Zootopia's inclusion in Animal Kingdom, specifically his idea is that Zootopia is kind of a human story played through the lens of animal characters.
Right. The idea that animals that care about politics are not animals.
Exactly. So
the phrase he carries is not politics. He says animals with pants.
Yeah, animals with pants. Yes, exactly. So how does that, how does that fit in with the story of Animal Kingdom, which is about the stories of animals specifically, told by them, through them, and the story of conservation and so forth? It's an interesting idea, and people might say, well, how does Pandora fit? And it's like, well, it was also supposed to be myth and legend incorporated into Animal Kingdom, at least initially. It's why there's like a dragon on the logo and so forth. So it's I would say it is flexible enough to include a story like Zootopia, at least in my opinion, and I say that partially because I think a lot of people maybe expect a story like Zootopia to take place within Animal Kingdom, but again, this is a very controversial issue. Anyway, when it came to Tropical Americas, though, this was an opening day land for this park, opening day attraction, that being a dinosaur, at least as it was known. It was counted into extinction before, that it was rebranded Dinosaur after the animated film actually came out, and unfortunately didn't do that well at the box office, but that legacy has been tied to that attraction ever since. So I think a lot of people look at that land and say that, yes, it can be very much improved. I think people would like to keep the dinosaur theme and not something as generic as maybe what they're planning. I don't think that there's that what they are attempting to add to this park has no value, but it has been controversial.
A former Imagineer, Jim Shull, has called this topical America's Land,
right?
Where they can just essentially stick anything in there, which that's the direction that Disney is going these days. Is where can we put what we want? we want this in the park. Now, where can we stick it? It seems to be
Exactly.
the modern thinking. And I'm not trying to be too disrespectful to modern Imagineers. I know they're probably doing the best they can in this situation, but like the IP carousel and the Encanto ride and Indiana Jones, those are, I guess, technically South America. There was some mention of Coco going into this space, but it sounds like Coco is not going to get an attraction here. And also, Coco is Mexico, which is south of the United States of America. It is not South America. So maybe there's at least some tying into the South America theme that they're putting here.
I think some of the topical Americas conversation as well has come from the fact that we have heard, at least internally, that there has been some trepidation from Imagineers regarding the budget allotted for this specific land. And, like, for example, we've heard that Josh Giamaro apparently gave a note that said that these buildings can't just look painted or repainted. They have to be more substantial. And the fact that that even was asked in the first place is really something. But secondly, if that was a note that was given, perhaps that's all that was done to these buildings, and perhaps that was a budget constraint.
That doesn't sound like turbocharging to me.
Right.
That sounds like, I get it. People have limited resources, but that's not something that you associate with the Walt Disney Company. They want to be viewed as a premium theme park experience, and so
Yes.
a retheme that is done on the cheap, and that's this appears to be the next thing that's going to happen, despite them saying that Villains Land is going to be next or Cars Land is going to be next. This is the most likely new land that we're going to be getting, because we know that construction is happening on this one now, as opposed to the other one where we're not even sure the permits have been approved for the other lands. So
Well, that's the thing. We have seen lands that have reused assets of the former land, right? We saw that with the Avengers Campus with Bugs Life, Bugs Land, I should say, and we saw how that kind of went, and that was kind of lackluster. But you would have expected, if you were going to be reusing already existing infrastructure and just overlaying things on top of that, that you could get maybe a substantial budget that could be used for other things, including the modification of those buildings to make it look unique and new. I guess what I'm trying to say is that you'd think that you'd be able to stretch that budget out further, and yet they only allot the minimum required in order to transform these lands, and it honestly it's been lackluster, and I think that contributes to this idea that this brand that says that they're a quality brand doesn't necessarily reflect that in their actions.
Yep. Now, I will say, I think that I've not been a huge fan of Dinoland USA. I get it. Even when I was a kid, it was not quite for me. Going to a playground within the park was not necessarily something that appealed to me, or my parents, who wanted to make sure they could keep track of me. I do remember when McDonald's actually directly sponsored the play yard there, and that was kind of fun. Dinosaur, this is a case against theme parks actually promoting films, because if Dinosaur Countdown to Extinction, whatever you want to call it, if that actually promoted the film, it would presumably be a more popular film at this point. But it was in that era when Disney was trying to do more intense rides, which I think also, ketchup, mustard, and mayo notwithstanding, didn't do much to promote that actual film, didn't keep children interested in a Disney film. By the way, a scary ride to promote a toy, a semi-computer animated film. That's a very interesting footnote in Disney history that we'll be losing here. Vash, do you have anything you want to say before we wrap this one up?
The only other thing I'll add to this is I think a lot of people are hesitant about the idea of replacing this land entirely with the Tropical Americas theme, only because it's Disney officially walking away from dinosaurs entirely, essentially. I mean, at Walt Disney World property, now with the loss of Universe of Energy, and now with this, there really isn't a place where dinosaurs reside within all of Walt Disney World. And it's just kind of an aspect that they've entirely walked away from. and something that they solely owned going back to the 1960s with the Ford's Magic Skyway and those Primeval World figures that were then transferred to Disneyland, the Primeval World diorama and so forth. Like that's something they owned. I suppose Universal, with Jurassic Park and Jurassic World, has been so successful that the company's just like they're ceding ground essentially, which is really interesting and really fascinating, and something that it should be remembered in this conversation as well.
Right, and this is essentially the first response that Disney will have to Epic Universe when that comes out. Now, that being said, we want to throw this to our commenters. Are you going to be visiting Dinoland USA before it shuts down? Will you be documenting it for yourself? Will you be getting one last ride on Countdown to Extinction before it gets replaced with probably Indiana Jones? It is Indiana Jones. They've said that. I think they've said that publicly now. That being said, thank you so much for watching. Like this video if you like this video, and consider subscribing to That Park Place for all the news that should be fun.
Thanks for watching That Park Place News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.